Call the meeting room to order. We're meeting tonight as a continuation of the November 19 discussion on limited solar regulations. Staff, would you want to call the roll for tonight, or do we need to?
This is a continuation, but I think we just note that all members are present tonight.
Okay. Hope everybody's had a chance to take and review and put some thoughts together on the regulations. As we've done before with text amendments, I think what I'll do is we'll go page by page and paragraph by paragraph if so needed. So if it's the pleasure of this board, we'll just start digging in here. Staff, do you have any comments before we get started?
I just have one, I guess, Mr. Chairman, and I was asked by Mr. Macklin to give like an overview of the previous case that we did back in 2021 of the other solar case. So whenever the board would like to hear about that, I can have like a little synopsis of that case to kind of catch everybody up. We can do that at any time pleases the board, on that, and that's my only real comment right now.
Okay, all right, we can do that right now. That's okay with everyone? Sure. Go right ahead.
I just have a brief kind of overview. Art Valley Electric back in 2021 proposed to locate a limited scale solar project in the county, and it was located at 108th and Sunrise, which is in the extreme north part of the county, on the county line, just a little bit east of Sunrise Drive. And so they made application for a conditional use permit as required by our regulations, and we went through the same type of public hearing process that we would for any type of conditional use permit: notification of property owners, public hearing process. This board makes a recommendation, and then that recommendation gets forwarded to the county commissioners. And so back in September of 2021, that project was reviewed and ultimately approved by the county commissioners. We did have 9 basic conditions of approval here. I can certainly go over those. I believe you kind of received a synopsis of the case and all that information that we had back then, but I just kind of had some highlighted points that I would thought the board may be interested in, so I can just kind of read through those. They're all kind of in the information that I provided you, but Art Valley had proposed and was subsequently approved for a 50-foot setback off of the right-of-way. They had a 30-foot setback off of the east property line of that 8-acre parcel, which they subsequently purchased from the landowner at that time. They had a 76-foot setback off of the west property line, and then a 20-foot setback off of the south property line. As I said previously, it was about an 8.6 acre parcel that they proposed to have a conditional use permit on. It generated around 1 megawatt of power. They had 18 rows of solar panels on, like, if you will, the northern part of that parcel, and then on the southern half of that parcel, they proposed another 17 rows of solar panels. They encircled the whole property with a 6-foot chain link fence, and then underneath all of the solar panels, they agreed in their write-up to plant native grasses. They said to construct the project that there was going to be regular, what you would call semi-trucks and pickup trucks that would deliver all of the materials to develop this solar farm that was out there. They had estimated this to be a 25-year life cycle for that project, and then after the conclusion of that 25 years, they indicated in their write-up that the panels will be removed from the property and the land returned as much as possible to its original intended use. I say in September of 2021, the county commissioners reviewed your recommendation and subsequently granted approval of the project, and we had 9 conditions of approval. You have to remember at that time that we didn't have specific solar regulations in place, and so it was treated just like any other type of conditional use permit we have, we review it, and if we see that there are certain conditions that need to be placed on a project in order to maybe make it fit for that area and less intrusive, then those were placed on there, and so that's kind of all I have for that. Were there questions on it?
Is it all completed now?
It is not complete, to my knowledge. I
What is the planned schedule?
have not heard from them. It was approved. The board and the commissioners subsequently did not place any kind of construction timelines on that project, so it's a valid conditional use permit today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And so if somebody else wants to purchase that land, so long as they meet the conditions of approval that are in place out there, then they could come in and develop that solar development project, so long as it meets the site plan and everything else that's in place. Now, any changes to that, if they want to add additional panels or not comply with all the conditions of approval for whatever reason, then that would generate a new conditional use permit and a new public hearing.
Mark, were there any objections raised at that time, do you recall?
Yeah, there were no objections really from the general public. I think that area of the county had very few landowners. I could probably look right quick and tell you, but the majority of the land was owned by a couple, three families. Looks like we, at that time, notified, seven people of that, and obviously published in the paper. At that time, it was the Hutchinson News, and we did not receive any kind of objections to the project, or really any kind of comments that would cause concern, both in favor or against, really. So it was a fairly uneventful, I think, public hearing, if you will, in that sense.
My recollection is that they tried to cite that in McPherson County without success, and then came to Reno County and had success.
I believe that was true. I believe that's what was discussed at that hearing, yeah, is that they wanted to put it in McPherson County originally.
Their substation is just right across the road from that, from the site that they applied for here. They got the permit. And that's the county line where it sets.
The main difference between what they did and what we're proposing are gonna be, I mean, just in general, are gonna be setbacks and fencing. We got an 8 foot, they've got a 6 foot,
Right.
they're 50, 75 foot, or 100 foot. So it's major.
Yeah, it was.
Without getting into a lot of the other nitty gritty.
Yeah, we
on the regs.
didn't get into decommissioning, developers agreements, even erosion control permits. Now, certainly developing more than, an acre of land would probably trigger a Kansas Department of Health and Environment permit, for erosion controls, but there wasn't anything, at the county level that we required. Certainly, like we put on all of our conditional use permits, that you got to meet all applicable federal, state, and local regulations. It's that kind of a general umbrella that kind of covers us to say, hey, if there is a federal or state permit that you need to acquire that permit. So, yeah, there were no specific regulations in the books here that they had to follow.
And there's also an existing one that's been in operation out in section 17 of
Yeah, you're talking about the one out west.
by Huntsville.
Yeah, by Huntsville, yeah. That one is unzoned, and so there are no zoning regulations for that. There is no public hearing, no requirements to seek permits or
So when
anything.
was that one installed?
That I don't even know, because of the fact they did not have to come through this department, so I have no
Do you have any
idea.
idea how big it was?
I remember looking at it, I'd have to guess, I'd say it's probably around the 10-acre limit, just like this one. I don't think it's 50 acres, 20 acres or anything. It's a smaller one. But like I say, I don't really have a lot of information because it's unzoned. It didn't come through us for approval.
If I remember, just being as a neighbor farming just to the west of that was installed about the same time that the Medora one was going through the permit process. I think that was a similar project, and it's about 8-9 acres,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, I wasn't contacted on it or anything, so I really don't have any kind of history on that at all, so.
Since the setbacks that were determined on that was based upon how the land was zoned at that time, is that how that was determined?
Yeah, that's how we did that. We just used the basic setbacks for the agricultural district. That property is on ag, and so we used the setbacks for that zoning district.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions? Harley, thanks for requesting that. That gives us a good
I
baseline.
think it's set the stage for our continued discussion.
For sure. For sure.
Because what we might be discussing now, even though it was an unzoned area, someday that might be different.
Exactly. So I guess we'll jump in here. We'll start with, I'm gonna bypass 25-101 and 102, which are the purpose and intent and applicability. Unless anybody has any questions about those two paragraphs.
I just had that one little omission on item 2 and 101. I mentioned that last week. I think Mark made note of it. So, one word that got left out.
Yeah, that, and I need to change that right now to say number 8. So it'll be 15-111, number 8, when I went through the document. That may be subject to change in the future as well, but as it stands right now, I'd have to change that, so, based off of potential new directions as well.
Okay. We'll go to paragraph 25-103, definitions. Any discussion with those? I know staff had items 3, 6, and 8 that they added into the definitions. Didn't know if there was any questions there.
Three needs a comma, looks like after residential.
Yeah.
Yeah. With that,
Go ahead.
I had in my notes here, we had some discussion last month, on the participating and the non-participating, so numbers 1, 2, and then number 4, the qualified third party, whether are those definitions needed right now, since we're only going to be dealing with really one property owner. That was my one question. And then the other one was on the private, number 9 on there. I did take this board's direction and added that to the residential solar section. And so we could eliminate number 9 from this document if this board so chooses.
So you move that, put that where?
I put it in the discussion with the residential solar,
Okay.
and so that'd be under the Article 15.
15?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I added that. You don't have the updated copy. I was waiting to maybe see what changes you have, and then next meeting I'll produce the next version, if you will.
So that went to Article 15.
That went to the Article 15 under the Ag District, and then the residential district is where I did that, so.
Okay. Is that okay with the board to omit that in this section 25-103?
I just feel we need it for clarity.
I mean, it didn't hurt to leave it if you want. We can leave it if you'd like.
Is it redundant to have it in both places, or is it, I'm just
Well,
asking just to see
I don't-
your
yeah.
clarity. I get that, I just didn't know for our regulations purposes if redundancy is, in your
I
opinion?
think it is. I mean, it's like it's in two different places. It doesn't really hurt, I guess. It helps to let people know what a private system is, I suppose. But if these regulations are for limited scale, then we should probably only focus on limited scale, and that's kind of where I was going.
Yeah, because section 25101, number 1, describes that the purpose of Article 25 is for a limited scale solar project, right?
Right.
So if someone's on page 2, is it a safe assumption to think that they're intending to read this from the perspective of a limited scale commercial?
That's why I was leaning toward eliminating the private and just have everything to do with private or residential solar be focused in Article 15. Everything with limited scale is in this Article 25, and not have them intermixed.
Or could you leave it in and just reference Article 15? So if somebody's looking for solar regs and they come in here, because in Article 15, they're not, it's, that's not necessarily about solar or anything.
Yeah.
But here, they see, okay, you reference Article 15, they say, okay, private, well, I gotta go over to Article 15, look at it, give you more of a roadmap, possibly.
So remove the description and just
Yeah,
replace
say,
with see Article 15?
See whatever section in Article 15, the appropriate section in Article 15.
I could do that. And then I would say the same thing would hold true probably for number 6, dealing with the commercial solar energy. We probably want to have a reference to that once we get a formal direction. We'll have to do something with that definition too. Say, see Article 15, or leave it in, leave it right there.
We don't know where we're going with that, though.
Right,
Yeah.
once we know where we're going with that. Right.
I have a question that I'm trying to understand why I'm even asking it, but I guess it's just a question. Is it important that we think about this as a landowner issue or a lease situation? I'm just thinking of the relatively brief description you gave of the conditional use permit and maybe where we're headed with this. And if a landowner is wanting to do this on their own land, I'm just trying to reconcile in my head where the big picture of what we're doing here.
Land use.
I was going to say, I think you need to approach it from a land use issue versus who is going to ultimately own the property. I mean, this one that we did in 2021 could have easily been just a lease agreement between the farmer, landowner, and Ark Valley. In this particular case, the landowner actually sold the land to Ark Valley. So I don't know whether it's an ownership or a lease agreement would have much of a concern from our point of view versus a land use issue. That
Well, we really don't, from our perspective, we really, okay, this is going to sound harsh, but we'll flesh it out. We really don't care what the name is on the title. We care about what the land use is.
exactly. That's what I was exactly going to say. We don't care who's going to own the property, if it's a lease or if it's going to be owner occupied. We just care about what land use is going on that property. That help or?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm just
Well, I
thinking
guess, do you have an example like what the concern would be, and maybe we can discuss that?
Well, I guess what I heard from the public comment time was landowner rights and, doing, kind of protecting your property or doing what you want to do with your property. And I know I've heard that from the county commission, and so I'm just have this floating around in my head. And then I heard this conditional use permit just went whoop, straight through and seemed pretty easy. And now we're going to create a lot of pages of regulation for a landowner to do essentially what we let them do before.
Not the landowner. It's whoever's putting in the solar system that's going to comply with the regs. That doesn't necessarily, it is not necessarily the landowner. You know, it could be the utility company who's leasing the ground. And the landowner, his only activity is collecting a rent check. So you're talking about the use of the land and not who owns it.
It does seem a little bit different. I'm just, I use the word different, that we're, 3 years ago, I'm going on 3 actually, that we approved this thing, just with 9, there were 9 conditions that were written. And now we're wanting to approve a document that's got or different terminology that has many pages.
Yeah.
And I get where you're coming from there. Part of it is we've become smarter over time. Now, is this document in totality what we need? That's what we're here to discuss. And whether or not these 9 conditions would be, we're the discussion we have, if the 9 conditions that were on that previous case satisfy this board, we could go through those line items and move on. But I think for the most part, just from our varied backgrounds and and from the knowledge that we've gathered, we probably need to go through the larger document and make sure that we've got not something that confines the applicant, but also gives them some guidelines. And that's a big non-answer for you, Garth, but
I'll keep working on it.
it's, I too bounced back and forth as I was reviewing this document, going back and forth from the conditions that were put forth to what we had here to see where it all fit and whether we're staying consistent or whether we're improving or whether we're hindering.
I think part of it is with the additional stuff. One of the reasons we have all this additional things is trying to safeguard, the land and environment for the future.
Yep. We've definitely learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's, land and the environment are fragile things, and if we don't protect it, and somebody comes in and abuses it, it can be, create long-term issues.
Well, and I think, I kind of had a lot of the same concerns that Garth had, and I'm usually one that errs on the side of less is more. But, I mean, if you go through and read the regulations step by step and then look at Ark Valley's application from a couple of years ago, I mean, a lot of the requirements we're asking for, they already did, like site plans and contacting, identifying sensitive areas. So I see a lot of this as just putting down in writing ahead of time so everybody's on the same page, a lot of what we would expect anyway.
Exactly.
And I think having that written down is a good thing. Just there's fewer areas of gray, I guess.
And I agree with that.
Okay. Any other discussion on 25-103? .104. I'll go with paragraph 105. As I read through paragraph 2, I felt that was spot on, and even as I was reading through paragraph 3, I got to letter D, asking about the development agreement. I myself put a note in the margin says, do we really need a developer's agreement? Boy, I really struggled with that, but at the end, you know, it's kind of like love me not. But I think I don't know what that development agreement would gain us.
Well, I think it goes back to kind of what Alan was just referencing, though, that a development agreement sets out items that should be considered in, you know, the negotiations between the commissioner and the applicant for the conditions, like the nine things, conditions, whatever they had. You know, this is just putting the bullet points there, saying these are things that maybe you would need to look at, including in a development agreement, conditions for the issuance of that permit.
But if we're issuing that permit based upon the conditions, we really wouldn't need a development agreement.
But those are not conditions now. Those are things that we recommended to be included in the development agreement.
I guess I'm asking if that would even need to be a step in the process.
Or you just say, it didn't eliminate the development agreement, just make them conditions.
What other things might we be doing that require a development agreement? Other
Well,
than solar?
If we look at 25106, sorry, Harley, I don't want to get ahead of you here, but if you look at 25106, contents of a development plan, see, we're already lining out what we have there, what we need, what we want. And I just didn't know I don't know what the development plan would really gain us other than,
I guess I'm kind of agreeing with you. I'm asking Mark,
Okay.
what else might we be doing that requires a development agreement,
For anything.
ignoring solar completely?
Currently, there are no other land uses that mandate a developer's agreement be negotiated and signed right now. And so you can put this as conditions of approval. You could put in there something that says that the owner shall work with staff to determine, how these panels are going to be taken out after their usefulness is done. You could have it as a conditional use, a condition of approval, such as what Steve was kind of
So
suggesting.
basically, what they're saying in the paragraph that Russ is talking about eliminating, it says development agreement outlining the contents found in Article 25-110. So what we need to do, I think, is look at 25-110 and what's there and see if everybody's fine with just making those conditions of issuance of the conditional use permit rather than part of the development agreement. So then, we can strip that out and massage it around to where it's a condition for approval. Yeah.
Yeah, remember, as it stands right now, as written and everything, you're looking at a 10-acre site, no more than 10 acres. And so are a lot of those items in 110, are those applicable anymore, excuse me?
Yeah, that's kind of jumping ahead of where you're at now, Russ, but you want to jump up there now and look at those?
That's a question, let's get it, let's
This is the
jump up
first place
ahead.
where that is mentioned, and so I think this will set the.
Because, there's a lot of those I don't think are
Everybody on
needed.
that page, we're on page 2511 is where paragraph 25110 begins.
So
I guess the biggest, I trade back and forth, but we want the applicant to understand I wouldn't say urgency, but the severity or the responsibility that they have. But yet, are we putting some undue pressure on them with some of these requirements if they're small scale?
that was my point. Following up on the question you raised, I'm saying since we don't require a development agreement for anything else in the county, we don't need that here because we outlined what the developer has to do in order to make his application.
But the way it's worded now, that is, these are items that are in the development agreement that is a negotiation between the commission and the applicant. They're not things that are required as a condition by the application. So that's what I'm saying, is let's look at those things, say, okay, find out what's the ones we want to keep, don't want to keep, and then say, okay, the ones we want to keep, can we just make those conditions of the applicant, application, rather than going through a development agreement?
Well, I think that makes it too complicated. I think we don't need that development agreement as identified under item D.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Harley, is I kind of agree with you, but all these items that are listed in 25-110, which are the things that should be considered in the development agreement, do we want to just do away with all of them, or do we want to go through those and say, okay, here's the ones we don't feel we need to keep because of the limited scale of this project, and here's the ones we'd like to keep, so we take the ones we want to keep, not in a development agreement, we just make them as a condition, a requirement of the applicant. Which makes it black and white that way, yeah.
I would not want to lose the information. If we don't do an agreement, then it's going to show up in the conditions, and I would not want to lose the information just for future boards to have a checklist for a particular property. Some things may apply, some things may not apply. I don't know where that would reside.
You can create like another title, instead of calling it a developer's agreement, you can title it, discussion points, that need to be talked about in any application, and see how the applicant is going to respond to a road agreement, how they're going to respond to a decommissioning or erosion control, if you want to do something like that.
Other factors for consideration or something to that effect.
The applicant should discuss as well, so then you're not mandating it. You could have the applicant discuss, well, how are you going to protect our township and county roads? Or is it even applicable to the project?
I like your idea, Garth.
You could
Maybe not having the development agreement listed as one, but say future, their factors for potential considerations are the,
You could move
not
that,
in the regulations as such, but for the future, us to be able to read that and say, yeah, you probably, where this is going, we might want a road maintenance agreement, or we may need a traffic management plan, or we may need a something, whatever that
See
is.
what their answer is.
could we take those items and move those into 25-108?
I don't know that we want them in our, what is 108, get to Andy to see what we got there. Additional topics, nah, but that there were.
That gives you your checklist, so to speak.
Yes and no.
I guess the point that keeps entering my mind is we want to make it possible for people, whether it be electric, co-op, or whatever, to do business in Reno County without making it too complicated for them, or to have them steered off to another county just because they can't get anything done in this county. That obviously must have happened up at McPherson, as they moved that project into our county. They're going to pay property tax in our county. So I guess what I'm saying, we don't want to make it so complicated that we steer people away from doing business in our county and paying property tax.
I don't feel we're going to make it complicated. I think we're bringing concerns that need to be addressed, by the applicant to, protect, our natural resources, if you will. and the surrounding property owners, which that's, in this case, the property issue is not that big a deal.
The point you're making, that's the whole purpose of
So
the
if we,
planning commission.
if we move the topics to 110 over to paragraph 108. Paragraph 108 says, project shall address specific issues related with the project that include and are not limited to. And then if you read down through the development agreement, it's indemnification agreement, dispute and mitigation agreement, payment in lieu of tax agreement, fire and rescue plan, I'm not arguing that one, there probably needs to be a blurb somewhere. Damage reimbursement. I mean, there's, do we want to handcuff, do we want to task the applicant to provide those within the conditional use permit? And I don't believe so. I don't believe we do that.
No, I don't. Because
I mean, I guess I just want to make sure we all understand what 25, the development agreement isn't just, better make sure I got gravel on my road when you destroy it with the semis. It's more than that. It's a lot, there's a lot of nitty gritty there that goes back to the applicant.
And whatever somebody wants to do, they have to go through this planning commission.
And I think where Garth was saying, this isn't all bad to have this as a, hey, you probably ought to be thinking about this paragraph.
Yeah, but that's different than requiring them to enter into a development agreement.
Right, and that's exactly where I'm at. There needs to be.
I'm
hey,
supporting that position.
Do you need, maybe in certain instances, maybe there's an instance that there needs to be an indemnification agreement. We don't know that. But that allows this talking point, if it is other factors to consider paragraph instead of a development agreement, excuse me, there's a difference between development plan and development agreement. If we just change that from development agreement to factors to consider. Don, you're wanting to say something.
Well, I think your regulations need to be crystal clear. And I think when you open up something, suggestion that this is something that maybe somebody ought to discuss, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's.
What's the answer to that?
It's the Garth's point for the future us. I mean, we're not all gonna be here and have that baseline for discussion 10 years from now.
But when you mention things that need to be discussed, and it's not in the because anything that's important enough that needs to be discussed maybe should be in the regulations. And if it's something that just needs to be discussed, I don't know what the answer to that is. Can you fail a project or approve a project because of something you just decided to discuss that's not in the regulations? I mean, I don't know what that means.
So maybe we need to go through the sections in 25-110, decide what we need to keep as a regulation.
Yes.
And if we don't think it's to the level of requiring a set regulation, maybe it gets tossed.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, and that way your regulations are crystal clear.
All right, I'm game with that. Everybody on page 2511, paragraph 25-110. Give you a chance to read that opening paragraph. Point of clarification on the development agreement. That is between the Board of County Commissioners and the applicant.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So what Don's kind of proposing, I think, is eliminating the development agreement and going through these and cherry picking the ones we feel should be part of the regulations themselves.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm just putting my head around where we're headed so I can steer us the way we want.
Well, the last sentence in that first paragraph kind of gets to what we're talking about. It says, "This list of agreements and specific requirements can be supplemented or removed." So, in my mind, it is up for discussion.
Well, that's because we're talking about the development agreement, which is a negotiation between the commission and the landowner, the applicant. So they're saying, yeah, the two of them can decide. Now, if we're not gonna have a development agreement, there's no negotiation. So we either say, these are regulations, or you forget about it.
So we're including a list and just kind of pick and choose what's appropriate for this project and put it in the agreement. And at that point, it becomes enforceable or contractual.
Could be, yes. It could be a condition to the permit, yes. We'll go one by one here. Paragraph 1, the road maintenance and repair and replacement agreement.
I'm looking at Don at this one.
I mean, there's a big difference between worrying about the roads and stuff like that on a large-scale commercial than a 10-acre scale, so
Exactly.
that's up to you guys. I mean, you can,
And each time there is an applicant or an application, the township is notified, correct?
Sir.
So,
Yep.
I mean, you can, if they're wanting 20 ton of rock, they need to come to the meeting and put their voice in and say, hey, we need 20 ton of rock if this is going in our township.
But of course, the applicant's gonna wanna make sure the roads are suitable so they get their equipment in and out and don't get things stuck too.
There's,
well, they'll have to make it suitable.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm sure.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
But that's really no different than any other 10-acre project.
No,
So-
I mean, if I'm getting a building built, for crying out loud, it's coming in on a semi.
Right.
I can't imagine.
So I'm,
And there's going to be some interest.
And there's gonna be cement trucks.
yeah.
Yep. Chances are the yard that they're gonna be pulling into is gonna be worse than the road they're driving in on.
Well, I guess assuming this is a wish list, so to speak, I don't feel compelled to spend a whole lot of time going through it one by one. It's just, here's a list, people who are working on a developer's agreement that you can choose from.
Well, I thought we were leaning toward not requiring a development
That's
agreement.
correct. That is correct.
So we're looking at it from the perspective of what additional bullet points do we need to ensure are part of our regulation?
Requirements of the regulations themselves.
Yeah.
Not a part of a negotiated agreement.
Either take 25-110 completely out as it's written, or we say, okay, we need paragraphs, I'm just bulleting numbers out, 1, 5, 8, and 9, or whatever that is.
I said on item 1, or A, whatever, yeah, 1. I would look to Don for guidance, whether he feels that's necessary. Put him on the spot.
That's the road maintenance,
Road maintenance.
the road maintenance agreement.
Whether they could put public roads used for construction and maintenance. Also, they have to receive an oversized weight permit from public roads.
They have to do that anyway.
Yeah, they have to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess number 1 doesn't exist for any other project of an under 10-acre scale, right?
No.
Okay.
So,
So I say we don't. need it.
Really, 25-110 does not exist for any other project.
no,
It is very true.
yeah, but, so in this case, I think number 1, we could probably just eliminate
Yeah,
that
I would
for
agree.
these. All items A through C on that.
The whole thing, A through C,
Or E.
E,
okay?
yeah.
Paragraph 2,
I think that should be left in, pretty much. I think when I went through that, I felt maybe item I wasn't necessarily necessary.
So what happens currently, like say, if there's a large substation, kind of like the ones we, was it last year or the year before, that we approved for Evergy? Yeah. So if they decide that they don't need it, technology has changed, loads changed, and they just shut her down and turn her off, do we have any kind of requirements or do we enforce any kind of demolition?
No, not unless it's in the conditional use, and I don't think we had anything in that one. I don't think we did.
They generally own the land too.
Yeah, they own the land. That's a little bit different, but yeah, I don't think we put anything specific in there that it has to be removed.
And I don't know that that's good.
Yeah.
It probably needs some thought on your part.
As far as,
We don't need a salvage yard of solar panels.
pardon?
We don't need a salvage yard of solar panels, so
No.
I don't, whether, no matter who owns it, that shouldn't be something that's allowed in the county, but that's something for you to figure
They
out.
need to work that out as part of the decommissioning agreement, of what the ultimate disposition of those panels are. You know, or they're recycled or what.
I mean, I don't know if you make that part of the regulations or.
So maybe that's something that we haven't addressed during a project approval process, but maybe we should include.
The subject came up in public comments about, I think the reference was to like a hailstorm or something, and, suddenly the landfill gets 5,000 solar panels to contend with. That was the concern I had anyway, which I think is somewhat legitimate.
Well, is that any different than when a hailstorm goes through the city of Hutchinson and you have 15,000 roofs that get torn off and dumped in the
Same
landfill?
thing, yeah.
It could be different with the materials that are included in it.
I mean, this was a limited scale, so
Right.
That does help.
I would think that the worst case scenario is relatively small compared to some of the large projects.
Or is
we've
that
discussed.
something that Public Works could regulate as far as acceptable waste?
No, they take on toxic waste. They're set up for that.
They take, oil and pesticides and paint and all that kind of stuff, yeah.
They're all lined and stuff, so. I mean, I guess if this landfill didn't take it, they'd have to take it somewhere else, so. But I think they're set up for it.
Do you want to eliminate letter I? Is that what I
That's what that was my thoughts.
just heard?
I don't see any value of having it in there
Okay.
myself.
then letter H would probably follow right along it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, unless they're leasing the land,
Yeah.
that would be the,
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to, if I was getting the land back to farm, I wouldn't want a road right through the middle of an 8-acre piece.
no, or 10-acre piece.
No.
Yeah. We get rid of H and I.
Okay.
Okay, so where do we put this paragraph?
Well, let's see how many other paragraphs we have.
There you go. Okay.
And then we'll see where we put them all.
There, fair
Yeah, I
enough.
guess.
So paragraph 2 is, from what I understand, is concern for the group. We still have a couple sub-paragraphs on the next page.
on there, we're looking at making this a regulation versus a negotiated agreement, then L and M, I think we need to be specific on.
I was just looking at M going, boy, we better put something more specific.
Well, I think L's the same way. What conditions is decommission required?
Yeah. If you're going to a specific regulation, then a number should be put in there.
What do you say?
It's because it's not something that's negotiated anymore.
Right.
Absent the prior agreement, say the site is considered decommissioned and has been inactive for 6 months.
I think some wordsmith of that last sentence would be appropriate.
Put that, okay.
Is 6 months long enough?
Well, I mean, the thing I would be looking at there is if they were going in and doing like a major upgrade or something on their solar panels and stuff like that. Could that be accomplished in a 6-month period?
That's
You know,
what
they wanna
like a
keep-
hailstorm or a tornado or something. Maybe
Yeah,
they
possibly.
can't get replacement
Yeah.
equipment that fast.
Or, sometimes supply chain issues last 3 or 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could be waiting on a part for 6 months.
So you could make that subject to, a negotiation or a.
Well, there isn't a negotiation,
No.
so
But that'd be,
you say a year or
say a year.
or
I think a
9
year,
months.
I think a year would be reasonable.
I was thinking of adding something in there, if a system has not produced power or is under remodeling or
Yeah.
retooling
Refurbishing.
or refurbishing or something like
If
that.
like active
Yeah, active,
refurbishment
yeah,
or something.
yep, active updating of,
Yeah, like there's activity, because we don't want them to say, yeah, we're upgrading it, we've been upgrading it for 5 years.
right.
Yeah.
At what point are
So
you?
would that 6 months be enough then? I mean, if they actively are upgrading, I get the supply thing.
Yeah.
Maybe a year is the right number.
I'd make it 12.
12 months?
Yeah.
I could stand by that.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Then the letter M would
Does the county
fall.
commission have the authority to waive or change, like in this case, if we say 12 months and they're saying, well, we just can't get our equipment in for 18 months? Can the commission say, okay, we'll extend the 12 to 18?
Could they come to the planning commission and request a variance?
Not in this case, because in the regulations, it says that this board can't use Article 20 to waive any kind of specific requirement in this section. So we'd have to go back and eliminate that, and then through a conditional use permit process or through, another review of it, then you could waive that. But right now, no. Typically, yes, this board has the ability to waive certain requirements if it sees fit during a specific conditional use permit, but this is, no, you have to meet what is in here,
This would be
period.
after the fact anyway. The permit's already been issued, the site's been constructed, and
Yes,
10 years down the road, they want to do something.
right.
Yeah.
So they can't come to this board through a variance or waiver or anything like that and request that, like, a regulation be waived, no.
And that's because of Article 20.
I think it's Article 20.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Even in the case of a natural disaster, I mean, obvious
Yeah.
problem for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you stick by the regulations, Mark would say, no. you can't
If you
do
go by
it.
the regulations, no, yeah.
So do we need to look at, amending Article 20? Well, we're maybe looking at redoing 15 anyway.
Eventually, put it on the list and
We're
look
gonna have a
at
hearing
that.
for that. We can.
Article 20 is what this board uses to waive, like, parking requirements and paving requirements and loading space requirements. And so, to prevent, an applicant from requesting a waiver from these regulations, that section was put in place to say that, no, you have to meet these regulations and you can't request this board waive a certain requirement in these regulations. But you could take that section out if you like, and then you would have that back in your toolbox, if you will, to waive certain requirements if you deem
Those
necessary.
requirements during the application process?
It could be, yeah,
We're looking at, in this case, we're
Yeah.
talking about, after the site's
after the site's developed.
established, developed, and then it's been in operation for 10, 15 years possibly.
Well, you would put something in the conditional use permit probably that says that the applicant can have more time during certain instances, if you
So
will.
you could make that as a factor in the conditional use permit, saying that if the applicant is going to be, do whatever you want to call,
Rehabbing
reconditioning
it, refurbishing it, whatever.
upgrading or whatever the system, then they can have, they may be able to request additional time or
Right.
something. We can handle it that way, yeah. So we can do that and just put it 12 months and then.
Then letter M would say the time the decommissioning must commence after 12 months of non-activity. And then it should be completed in how soon? Give them 6 months? So if letter L sunsets at 12 months,
Yep.
then letter M needs to sunrise at 12 months, and where does it
Right.
end after that?
Say 6 months is reasonable.
Who's enforcing this?
Be me.
How in the Sam Hill are you gonna be able to tell? Without making, I'm not trying to be
Yeah, no, I
a
know.
smart aleck,
But they will.
how in the world do you tell? If you're, unless you have an applicant that, is very, honorable and comes in and says, hey, Mark, this field up on 108th Street, we're getting out of it. And you say, okay, you got 6 months to get out from underneath it.
Yeah.
If you won't ever know if they don't come and tell you
Well,
whether or not that field is putting electricity in
Find
there.
out.
We may not know, but they'd have to provide that documentation somehow, that it is producing
Okay,
electricity.
where does it say in here that they have to tell us that it's producing?
Is it like any other regulation where a lot of these are by complaints or questions from
A lot of them are,
citizens?
yeah.
So it would be a scenario where the solar panels haven't followed the sun for a year, there's no lights, the
Yeah.
fence is falling
You look
down.
at, unpermitted, construction going on.
Yeah, or somebody came and took all the,
Somebody sees it and says, oh, they got a permit for that, and they ask Mark, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know about it, So,
Well, they would get notification of that, and they'd have to provide documentation that it is still producing, and if they can't do it, then,
Much the same as you get a request that say, hey, we got this building going up and on this, at this address.
yes.
every 6 months, Mark can just go
Yep.
out and drive around all the solar fields and make sure that they're in
Verify, yeah.
disrepair and
Gotcha,
whatnot.
I
got it.
just want to, before we put something on the regulation side, I want to make sure that how it's going to be handled at the end game.
Right.
do we need to issue Mark a multimeter so he can?
Yeah, there you go.
See if there's voltage coming out?
That tinfoil hat that glows.
They've got one in the shop back
Oh,
there,
yeah,
surely.
yeah.
Okay, so you want to say the timeline when commissioning must commence, or should we want to say commence, or must be completed?
Should commence after 12 months of non-active, of no produced power or something to that effect.
Oh, yeah.
And then decommissioning must be completed 6 months post haste. Somehow you could wordsmith that into something.
Okay.
That last sentence there, the decommissioning agreement.
Eliminate that.
Yep, we don't need that one.
3. What's your feeling on that, Mark?
Oh, let's see what I have. Look at my notes. I had to eliminate it. I don't think it's necessary. The indemnification agreement.
I don't see any need for it either.
And that's something else we don't require for other projects.
Right. We've never required that before, the indemnification agreement, so for that reason too, yeah, I don't think it's needed on a smaller scale project. Is that the consensus to?
Yep, number 3 is gone.
Have we ever had a problem with abandoned commercial property and tax sale and?
Probably. I mean, what's the
As
problem?
far as how it looks, or?
Just taking care of it, disposing, demolition.
Well, we don't require that in the county. We don't have any nuisance codes. We don't have building codes that would say that a certain building has to be torn down, whether it's a residence or a commercial building. So if it's a building that's got the roof caved in, growing up in weeds, I don't touch it. So to answer your question, no, we haven't had a problem because we don't have any regulations that require it to be cleaned up. I mean, that's something like what you're talking about would be fitting under nuisance codes, in which we don't have any.
We don't have any nuisances?
We don't have any nuisances. Yeah. Right.
Paragraph 4.
I think we ought to leave that one in.
It's asking an awful lot.
I guess I go back to my previous question. Are there other projects of this scale that the county requires this?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
It's the thought that enters my mind too.
Yeah.
Same question I raised earlier.
I have pictured in my mind the back of a semi-trailer. How's my driving? There's the dispute and mitigation agreement right there. And so if there's a
Yeah, but
sign,
we can't put signage.
but there is some signage that can be put up on the project that could indicate that if we so desired.
It doesn't mean we can't do that. It just, what I say I know is we have not done that dispute mitigation agreement for any other project in the past.
So really, if a neighbor or a landowner has an issue, then their resolution process without number 4 is the same as any other conflict between two individuals or entities.
Exactly.
They either have to talk it out or go to court.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's not a zoning violation, then it's a dispute between both neighbors.
So, yeah, I don't
We
see,
can remove that.
yeah.
I'll go with that.
Pilot agreement, that really came about with the larger scale stuff that we had.
So
I
we
think
don't
that
need
can
that.
go away. Fire and safety rescue plan, I think that'd be, do we require that elsewhere?
No. But I would say to this, that with any conditional use permit, emergency management gets contacted, and they in turn will contact the fire district as long as, as well as me with the project, and so is that covered, is that good enough? And then emergency management can get with the developer on that.
I mean, the thing that concerns me, because this thing references, prescribed burning. Okay, and we're saying that, okay, we want you to revegetate the ground under the panels with, native grasses and whatnot. So if you have a neighbor that's burning, or, you get a wildfire somewhere that comes in, what's gonna stop it from heating up those panels?
Does emergency management have any power? I'm thinking, we've got some potential hazardous situations with battery storage, probably not on this limited scale, but if there was, does emergency management have an avenue to enforce something that they think needs to be implemented, or?
That I don't know. I don't know if they would or not.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking that we put that item 6 in there for a reason, and it's not, the reason is gone, in my opinion.
If emergency management is alerted through the process, then I agree with Hartley.
They would report to me any of their concerns and/or get with the applicant.
How are you
themselves.
gonna mitigate that anyway? I mean, if everything's a native grass,
Right.
and you get a wildfire or a prescribed burning gets out of control, there's you don't have any dead space, a fire break anywhere around the property. You're not gonna put 30 feet of gravel down, so.
If I'm an applicant making that kind of investment, it's just,
Oh, yeah.
it's no different than a house. I'm gonna make sure that.
Fire department's out there.
I'm gonna make sure that I've mitigated everything I can.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that could go away.
All right.
Damage reimbursement plan, paragraph 7.
Bye-bye.
Yep, I think it goes away also.
Yeah.
Kinda goes
I
right
agree,
along.
it's not necessary.
And 8 apparently is already gone, so.
Yeah.
We can lose straight to 9.
And
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know what happened to number 8. I thought I had my numbering there. I was hoping nobody would see
Blame it
that.
on the computer,
I never liked number 8 anyway.
And it's good to see somebody's reading the document. Unfortunately for me, but yeah. My numbering got off.
I think 9 and 10 can both be eliminated.
agreed.
That's it.
That's it. So,
Put that down pretty fast.
So it looks like the only thing we're concerned about is the decommissioning, so I can,
yes. Yep, paragraph 2, looks like the only one that we've kept in the mix.
okay? So then if you go back to page 3,
Yes.
letter D,
Word.
does
Yes,
that answer your question then?
yeah. So we can just delete that.
We delete letter D on that.
Yeah.
Where would it be appropriate to put that paragraph 2 that we just
I think 25-108,
went through?
I don't know, but Mark, that's his.
Yeah, I can do that, because I anticipate this board is going to want to see a cleaner document before making any kind of recommendations,
Pretty
so
much.
what I will do is make any correction this board wants, and then provide you a clean document without the highlighted blue and yellow in it, so you can read it thoroughly one more time at least.
Good.
So, I can find a place for that.
I know you can.
Thanks. Get confidence in me, yeah.
Yeah.
So paragraph 4 right underneath of that, it has to do with extraordinary expenses incurred. Mark, do we need to, is that I know we had that in there for the big projects. Is that something that we need to keep in there for these? I mean,
Doesn't hurt to leave it in.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to leave it in. I don't know if it's necessary. I mean, this was put in place in case we have to rent another facility to have a hearing.
I was gonna say, judging by the
It says written agreement. I don't know if, it doesn't need to be necessarily a written agreement. I think that can probably be tweaked.
Yeah, because the last, the approved conditional use permit, there weren't really any unusual or extraordinary events, were there? I mean,
No.
There wasn't.
No, there wasn't.
There wasn't 300 people that showed up.
But that's not to say that there couldn't be for another project somewhere else or any other, but saying that, again, too, we have not had anything like this for any other projects. You recall we've had some other controversial conditional use permits that a lot of people wanted to listen to and testify to, and we haven't required them to sign any kind of agreement. So does it hurt to leave it in? Probably not, but is it necessary? Probably not.
it's a protection.
Yeah.
We can ask, I mean, it gives us the right to
And you can
ask.
just strike the word written, shall include an agreement. Do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
It goes back to the public comment. If it isn't written word, it doesn't go to the record. So that's
And
ringing in my
that's a
ears
pretty
little bit,
simple
too.
agreement to write, too. You know,
So no other 10-acre conditional use permit development would be subject, they don't have this. Is that what we're saying?
No other conditional use permit application
If
has.
I wanted to build a 10-acre truck yard of some kind, you're not going to task me with this?
Right.
I don't know why we
Yeah.
single out
Yeah.
one particular.
I mean, this was, again, put in place for large-scale commercial, and so, yeah, we don't request that or anybody else. I think, this room can handle most cases, so
So you're saying get rid of it.
I could do without it.
Okay. I can go either. I'm riding the fence. I could go either way. So you're my swing. You're my swing vote.
That's kind of been our, as we've gone through this, well, we don't do this to anybody else, so, yeah, why pick on this particular type of?
I'm with you.
I think I'm leaning toward Garth on this one.
Okay, let's take it out. Okay, moving to paragraph 25-106.
We need to change the title of that paragraph.
No, this is development plan, not a development agreement.
Excuse me, thank you for the clarification.
Nope, that's fine. I struggled with that. As I was reading it, I went back and
Yeah.
forth and, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
this is where we need to know where it is, what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Okay, I'm with you.
Really, the letter F was one in question there.
Yep, I don't think we need that either.
We don't,
And also I
really, yeah. The connection to an existing distribution line, it does not dictate what the land use is. I really couldn't care. I mean, they're gonna be hooking to something. We don't need to regulate it.
So you want that eliminated?
Letter F is out and letter I is out.
And then H, right above it.
H is topography of the parcel. That's,
I think we
I
gotta
don't
keep
know if
that.
that would be a bad plan.
No.
I would, tell me, what,
I'll give you the slope, if there is any,
Right.
you're looking at drainage issues and whatnot.
is that something you would use, Mark?
You'd only use it if you're going to require like a drainage plan or an erosion control measure. Other than that, I wouldn't use it. you'd require it if we would have somebody develop that, and then we would have to have that in place for an engineer, for somebody to review that.
Really, we don't look at topography unless it's a subdivision, right?
And we're looking at that because of drainage and making sure the drainage is retained on that property. So that's why we require it for subdivisions. Other developments, we don't require, we required one drainage plan in many years, and that was just the one recently that we did.
Well, currently in 25-107, we were, section 6. We require, we have a discussion on runoff, don't we?
Yes.
So, I mean, if we're requiring them to address that in some form, then probably adding contour lines to their project plan is not gonna be that big of a deal.
No, if you leave, if that's all left in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that'd probably be the next big topic of discussion is the erosion control drainage.
Twenty-five one oh seven, that first introductory paragraph.
Are we good with the other items in paragraph 106, J through O? And then item 2. All good with that? So we'll go to 25-107.
I'm still processing why we don't care about the maximum height of the utility pole.
We don't regulate that now. Think of the transmission lines that go across the zone portion of the county. They're quite tall.
It is what it
It
is.
is what it is. And
So if I'm a neighboring property owner and there's a 100-foot Mondo pole as close to my property line I can get, I don't know why they'd have one of those, but
yeah, and I don't know if that. Paragraph 25-107, since we're taking away the development agreement piece, outside of some adjustments of that last
A sentence.
that last sentence could go away.
Right.
Sections 1 and 2. Sections 1 basically gives a list, is the notification area, correct?
Yeah, that's the statutory requirement, but, you know, it's probably less of a concern now. I mean, this, you know, still want it from the property boundary instead of a lease area. That just lets more people be notified of a potential, you know, project. If we're talking still 10-acre sites, like I say, probably not as crucial as a large 2,000-acre project, you know, where you could just do a small lease area and people may not be notified of a project because they're gonna just notify the lease area. So like, for example, if you have a 40-acre parcel, but maybe they're only gonna lease 5 acres or so in one extreme corner, you could have a situation where, you know, only a couple people get notified for that area of the project. And so that's why I said through the property boundary, so. Probably less, like I say, in play with a 10-acre maximum site, but
2 is the wildlife and parks.
Should leave that.
Yep. And I think To me, item 2 has wildlife and parks, and then it has the groundwater management district, and it has the USDA, has all those. It actually, in my mind, covers everything that item 3 talks about. I think we could eliminate that item 3.
I agree, item 3 doesn't need to be in there for this sort of deal. If we go back to Garth's 10-acre truck place, we wouldn't do that if somebody wanted to develop that sort of a thing.
Everybody good with that?
What's the difference between 3 and 8?
Not much.
It seems like if we're gonna take one out, we take them both out.
That's, I have that note beside each one of them.
I agree, 8 has to go too. It doesn't have a place in this right now.
So we all agree that strike item 3?
I'm thinking on this a minute.
Okay. I'll give you a moment.
So all we're saying is they have to contact these agencies and say, hey, we're putting a limited scale solar system on this tract of ground.
On item
You got
2,
any,
yes,
you got any concerns,
that's correct.
period.
Yep.
And then it's up, then we don't need to bullet any of those saying, do you have concerns in any of these areas?
Right.
That's what I'm saying, is, do we want to do it that way?
I think if we require them to, let's just say they're in a corner of a pasture, and there's some potential that there's I don't know, an endangered bird in the area, Wildlife and Parks is gonna know it. Or they're gonna be aware of it to some
Maybe,
extent.
yeah.
Well, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So
Yeah.
if the applicant needs to contact them, we really don't need a third party for any environmental concerns.
No. I don't think we need that either.
Kayla, you've been pretty quiet over there.
Oh, I just want to make sure on the groundwater management with the F says special flood hazard areas, that we have that covered so that, like runoff and type thing. I guess that letter that we got from the Cheney watershed, or
City of Wichita.
Well, the Cheney watershed, when they don't really want to get into it.
No.
Will that be the groundwater management district, or is it sent to Wichita? Or, how do we do that, or how's that handled?
We're already addressing flood areas earlier in the document, are we not, Mark?
The flood area is already, addressed, because any type of man-made change to the floodplain, whether you're putting in a post for a solar panel or building a house, is gonna require a review and permit from me, and so this is just kind of added notice to the applicant, if you will, that, hey, if you're gonna do something, you need to get with me on that.
Well, and we already required them to identify special flood hazard areas as a part of 25106, right?
Right. Again, probably not so much in play, because we're talking about, right now anyway, a 10-acre site or less. This is more probably for the large commercial, where obviously floodplains are gonna meander throughout the whole project potentially, so.
Did that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
So what's the wishes? Do we strike item number 3? And then along with that, we'd just leapfrog to strike item number 8.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 4. How deep do we want the applicant to get involved with airports and FAA?
Could we just add FAA into not number 2 above? Along with the wildlife and parks and groundwater management, USDA, FAA. Just put the onus on the applicant to notify that agency.
There's no point notifying them unless it's a potential issue.
Within 1 mile.
Well, it's not up to us. I don't think we're prepared to discern a potential issue. At least I'm certainly not.
This 1 mile of an airport, that, once again, that big building that Garth is going to build over there for the trucks, we wouldn't require them to not put that within 1 mile of an airport. I don't see that.
Well, the main thing I would be thinking about there is possible reflection off the panels.
You can have a big metal building that has a big metal roof on it that does the same thing, maybe worse.
There's a big 1,000,000 bushel grain bin out here right next to right next to
There
the
is,
strip.
that's just a shine. Or the hospital parking lot, when the sun's just the right angle. My worry about section 4 is what happens if this permit gets lost, if this approval gets lost in the federal government molasses? Are we potentially causing more harm than good?
I think we're making it difficult for an applicant to serve the people in this county, maybe. We don't need that. And you're right, it could wind up going to Washington and we're waiting on Congress to decide whether or not this little part of a 10-acre thing can operate.
It's waiting a long time.
Yeah.
We can't make a decision.
Well,
Do you have any concerns as a pilot?
I can't say no. I mean, it's legitimate, like say the big buildings and they have solar panels on it, runways and stuff, but I don't know. I
maybe.
can't say.
Maybe we change it to a notification, we add airport owner to our notifications in section 2.
Talking about private?
Boy, there's a lot of little airstrips.
Yeah, we don't have an airstrip map, do we? I can think of 1, 2, 4. I can think of 8 off the top of my head,
8
plus the airport.
Yeah,
private airstrips.
I don't see any value in having item number 4 in our regulations.
The only thing I could see, Harley, is that first sentence, placed within 1 mile. That would be the only piece of that paragraph that I could see would be of value. That any.
So all you can do is just say limited scale solar system shall not be placed within 1 mile of a public airport or airstrip,
Yep.
including private airports or airstrips.
Yep. Period.
Period.
That would take out Alan's concern about the molasses.
Well, I go back to Garth's big 10-acre plot of truck place out there, that they got a big building, and are we gonna tell them they can't be within 1 mile of an airport?
Well, I guess my concern is, and I guess my question is, what if the FAA, say we take all this out and say, well, you can put it next door to the airport if you want to, and so the permit's approved and away it goes, and they're halfway through construction, and the FAA shows up and says, well, wait, we got federal regs that say you can't do this. Does Reno County have any skin in that game? Because we approved the permit?
Mark, do you remember where are there, those grants that were that were issued for solar power? There was one in Medora.
There's a couple of them in the city.
Where, do you remember where they were in the city?
No, not off the top of my head.
As some of the bold.
It was Bold, yeah.
Bold, their warehouses, I
Yeah,
believe.
That's right there off the airport. There's
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah.
And they're gonna do, roof mounted.
So if the feds are providing grants for solar, not that far from the airport, does that mean they're not worried about it?
I don't know, it's some thoughts that are going through my mind.
How big are these installations gonna be?
They're rooftop type installations.
A commercial building,
Yeah,
how big?
well, how big?
I mean, they're not gonna be a 10-acre or 8-acre tract, I'm sure, but
No, but all right, you can't really look into the crystal ball and tell where they're gonna come next, but if you took, let's just use the area right around the airport, you use the old Eaton complex, put solar panels on top of that, the Dillon's Warehouse. You've got the mall, you got Walmart, you've got Home Depot, you got Lowe's, right there all within a mile to, let's just say it was within a mile radius of the tower. That's significant.
And that could be all done outside of any kind of ground mount regulation.
And it's all
They're roof-
within
roof
the
mounts.
city, so it's
Yeah.
all roof mount.
yeah.
I don't think the mile away from an airstrip is, I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah.
I don't know what 10 acres of panels is gonna cost to an ultralight flying over that on turbulence or anything else, I don't know. But I don't think that's unreasonable.
That's where I was going, where that first sentence would probably be.
Just say you don't build them within a mile of an airport.
Yep. That's what we can control.
Okay, I'd buy that.
So I'm gonna change that to say no.
So, if a limited scale solar energy system project is placed, I would say no system
Yeah.
shall be placed
It's not
within.
yeah, but no.
Yes,
Within 1 mile of a
Within 1 mile
public
of
or
public.
private
Yep.
airport airstrip.
And I'll knuckle under and say, okay, let's leave that in there. Because I don't think it's ever gonna happen.
No.
But it's okay, leave it in there. But the developer now has a new charge he got to do in order to provide service to our county.
Item 5.
So I'm,
Sorry.
I just want to be clear on what I'm changing here. So I'm just going to say that no limited scale project may be placed within 1 mile of a public airport or airstrip,
Like public
Or
or
private
private
airstrip.
and also private.
airport or airstrip.
Without, period? or
Period.
Without FAA?
No, just period.
Period, right?
Because Westar owns an awful lot of acres a half a mile from the airport.
Yes, they do, right across to the north.
Yep.
Well, so that would include their Hutchinson Energy Center, right? So are we wanting to ban Evergy from?
But that's also in the city limits.
I don't
No,
think it is.
It isn't?
No,
It
it
is
isn't.
not.
Does it make a jagged edge over
It's
there?
specifically not in the city.
That's,
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not.
That's a jagged edge.
Yep. So are we willing to say at this point that Evergy will not be able to put any solar on there?
That's correct. If we write it in as that, that's exactly what that would be.
And I'd have to say that site out there is available for future development. And the biggest thing in new power plants is combining solar and along with fossil fuel to make electricity.
And they've put a substantial investment in peaking tanks out there, haven't they?
You got 3 combustion turbines out there.
And they have the infrastructure to move electricity. I'm not sure
They don't have one.
I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with a blanket prohibition on a site like that.
Well,
you
then
would add-
especially when you throw
then you
in
would
the
add-
private ones, because it doesn't take much to have a private airport.
No.
It just takes well, see here, yeah, they have to be registered through.
So Alan, you're saying then add to that sentence without notification to FAA or something like that?
No, he's saying, no, you don't.
Yeah,
Then we might as well just leave that whole
See,
paragraph in.
I knuckled under, now I'm back. No, we can't do that.
well, because mentally in my mind, as we were talking about this, I was trying to figure out where these prohibitions would be, and most of them are just, out in the sand or an area where it'd be easy to relocate to outside of a mile. But, there's some sites there that otherwise would make in my opinion, a pretty good spot for some panels. I don't know what other kind of use you would want for a site like Evergy's.
But, okay, it's not in the city, so is that in the zoned area? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
basically, it's still.
it's under county regulation.
An acre tract on there. How
Yeah.
much land,
So
there's quite a bit of
I'm back-
land in there. I
There
guess.
is. It's
Arguing
greater than
the
10.
position that item number 4 just shouldn't be there. Like I was originally until Russ. Now I'm back to the original position.
I feel like I need to apologize, Harvey.
Well, and if so within a mile, a lot of these areas where there's airstrips, if they're putting a project right next to it, they'll still be notified, right?
Oh, yeah. If they're a property owner, yes.
Yeah.
But if you say no, panels can go within a mile of it, then there's not gonna be a conditional use permit.
Right, there's no potential,
Yeah.
but there's still a potential for the airport owner to realize that there's a project coming in that might affect them.
Yes.
And then they could come to the public hearing and say, hey, guys, I'm worried about glare.
Yes, if you eliminate, if
we eliminate
yeah, if you
number 4.
eliminate that, then, if they're within 1,000 feet, then.
Yeah.
Then they will get notified, unless we put something else in place that says notify everybody,
That's why they can't.
all airstrips.
Gotcha.
All right, I think I'm coming around to Harley's point of view on this.
Now I understand.
But 2 people over there, they're putting their heads together.
They are.
Maybe you're gonna argue with us.
Oh, maybe.
Okay, so what's our wishes?
I'm in favor of taking 4 out.
Leave it out.
completely.
Okay,
Yeah.
based upon they're gonna be notified one way or the other.
Maybe, they may or may not be notified.
Right.
If they're not within 1,000 feet.
Right.
But we notify the city anyway, don't we?
Well, not necessarily, I mean.
Okay.
If,
If that's not in the city, would be in the
I
township.
guess you have to kind of clarify, I mean,
Township would be
if they're a property, if they own property within 1,000 feet, then they're gonna be notified, or if the project,
Of course, the city does own property within 1,000 feet because they got the fire station there.
yeah. And I would also add that if you're talking about Hutchinson, then they have a 1 mile notification area boundary around their city limits, so anything that is within a mile of their city limits, they would also receive a notice regardless if they are a property owner or not.
And they've bought up property on the approaches around the airport.
Yeah, yeah.
So really, any kind of activity in that area.
So I think that, like on the north side, I think it goes up to 56th Avenue. And so, yeah, there's like generally like a 1 mile barrier, if you will, around, or boundary, I guess you say, around the city where they would receive a notice.
So we're gonna scratch number 4.
Scratch number 4
Scratching 4 now.
altogether. Item 5.
I guess I don't have any objection to having it in there, even though I don't think it's necessary, but it's good boilerplate to make everybody feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that, you know, to consider the placement.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
5A, I don't know, we need that.
I want to go back to 4.
Too late.
This is kind of like snapping the ball to get past the
I've
flag.
already crossed it off, you can't go back.
Decided, Art.
If he pulls out his red flag out of
Yeah,
his pocket
flag.
for review, then we'll have to go back, I guess.
Well, the FAA apparently has published final policy aimed at ensuring that airport solar projects do not create hazardous glare. Now, I obviously haven't read the policy, but it is out there. And so I go back to my question, if we approve a conditional use permit, close, whatever the FAA policy is, within that space, does the county have any liability? Or is it all on the landowner?
Developer.
That'd be something probably for legal to answer. I don't know what type of liability we would have.
So what you're saying is maybe it's to be, we need to move something that states from the FAA up into paragraph 2, where they are
I
notified.
would, yeah.
So I would
My
say,
real thought.
Garth, again, you know, that's why on almost all conditional use permits, you know, we have that blanket statement that says that the applicant shall meet all applicable federal, state, and local regulations. And so if something like that would happen and it would come to FAA's light that, hey, this doesn't meet their regulations, and they didn't check and we didn't know about it, and it you know, it could void the conditional use permit because of that issue. And so we would, my non-legal opinion, would be all right with that. So that's why I put that in there. If there's some type of federal or state regulation that nobody knew about, and we permitted something, then that would have to be corrected before the conditional use permit would be valid.
Well, if you feel we're covered, I'm okay with that.
I think it'd be covered with that statement that I have on those conditional use permits.
Okay, item 5, we determined it needed to stay there, just subparagraph A under that.
I think we can delete the A, I don't know if we need that or not.
What's your question?
Whether we have that paragraph A, subparagraph A, under number 5.
What's in
By their
it?
nature, solar panels are designed to not
To
have
take
glare.
in, yes.
So, I don't know if it's an issue or not.
We've addressed it in, like you said, Steve, in paragraph 5.
Yeah.
Do we need to have a
Therefore, I
mitigation?
don't think A needs to be there. We've already said they gotta be designed and constructed to minimize the glare. Stop right there.
If they reflect the sun, they're not gonna work.
That's pretty plain, isn't it? Do we need a mitigation piece in there? Mark?
No, I don't believe so anymore.
Okay, that make that done. Paragraph 6, it addresses your Gayla, your stormwater, you manage your stormwater runoff, erosion, draining, revegetation.
leave that in.
Yep, for sure. Number 7, Mark, you might explain a little bit. The applicant needs a list of all required local, state, and federal government agencies. That would be, if they're gonna be going in a floodplain, they need a permit. If they're doing, what, kind of go through
It'd
that.
be like erosion control, you know, they would have to get an erosion control permit from KDG.
Okay, gotcha. Nope, that's fine. That plays right along with the previous one. Gotcha. We struck paragraph 8 in a previous conversation.
Right.
25-108.
Well, 7 would be somewhat of a solution to our FAA dilemma, wouldn't it?
Yes. Potentially. The catch-all that Mark mentioned was, must follow. This one is the applicant shall provide.
Yeah.
Uh, We're ready to move on to 25-108.
Sure. I am.
Okay, there, just a list of required, the boundary of the project is paragraph A, subparagraph B was in question. How the commercial energy system project will attempt to locate solar panels.
I think D could be eliminated.
Let them decide how they're gonna lay them.
Well, and I think, again, this was a commercial reg.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, if we're talking about 10 acres, you can, or 8 acres, whatever, you can be probably assured that most of the land is gonna be taken up by the panels, so the terrain probably doesn't come into play as much as it would. So you want that eliminated?
Yes.
And then C just needs to be changed to B. I think we
Yeah.
need to leave that in.
Is 5 miles the right number? That's what I have written in my notes.
I would say right now, and add to that, a potential project that Arc Valley is looking at, if it stays at 5 miles, their location, which I'm not at liberty really to say right now, it would not be able to go in. If you put this at 5 miles, then their proposed project would not be able to go in under these regulations because it's closer than 5 miles.
Do one of the existing ones.
To the one on, to
4 miles.
to the one on 108th.
Oh,
So, and you have to remember that the 5 miles was just a number that we threw in for discussion point.
It was a number where you're not building them every 5 miles, and now you got a commercial. Is, at 5 miles may be too much. I can't imagine them doing it every 3 miles, but I don't know, that 5 miles is just something we just threw in there.
we just threw it there to try to keep.
Something for you guys.
Just a starting place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
start
Saturating
building.
it. So this case on Arc Valley, what is the distance between the two sites, do you know?
It's less than the 26,400 feet. I don't want to,
Is it
close.
3 miles or what?
Are we gonna play the higher, lower game here?
Yeah,
it's within the 5 mile.
who
It's
wants to change 5, we gotta know.
it's greater than 3 and less than 5. How's that?
So we say 4.
So,
Well,
More
go-
work?
Well, go.
Let's see.
think
Now, I
the,
understand the reasoning for that, but I guess an actual number seems a little elusive as far as required separation.
Got to do something,
It's right there.
you know.
I mean, is it a mile? Is it 2 miles?
Sunrise, 108,
Well,
it's right in there
yeah,
somewhere.
it's right in this corner here.
Okay.
There's probably some other words could be used to say the same thing. What we're trying to do is eliminate a
69.
large scale
Oh,
commercial
69.
facility getting built and to get around
So that's
scale, small scale.
about 3 miles over, 2 miles up. So I was never good at trig, but that's less than 5 miles.
Yep.
I'm just thinking of my own situation and say the section across from my house. Well, if it's on this, there's one at this corner close to me. You know, I'm gonna see that all the time. If it's on the opposite corner of the section, which would be however you'd want to measure that, 2 miles, I would probably never see that.
But this subject is not putting them so close that some large-scale commercial person's gonna come in, company gonna come in and put a whole bunch of them within a mile, and now it's a large scale and not just, that's what this is about. So what separation is that, the word, you don't think they'll do
10-acre
that?
plots.
10-acre plots, yeah.
Yes, so they have 110-acre plots. So how many miles apart do you think you make that where nobody's gonna go down that road? That's what you're trying to look for.
So,
But we can, rather than a distance, we could do it with words.
Yeah, we know 5's too much. If you do 5, you're gonna cancel one of them, maybe that's already in the process. So,
what if we just, because we've still got a 10-acre maximum, right? So,
Right now, yes.
so if you have a section and it has a project on there, there's 630 acres, if I remember correctly.
Right.
yep.
That will never be, that they're
620.
620, yeah, I was never a numbers guy. So like if we limit it to one a section, then we'll guarantee there's no more than 620 or 40, there you go, yeah. That will never, ever be solar.
That's
Commercial,
basically,
so, yeah.
if one per section, then you're just saying a 1 mile difference separation.
Right.
You could have them next to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You could have 4 of
You
them.
could have 4 of them next to each
you
other.
could have 4, I guess you could have 4 on the corner, that would be
4 on the corner.
Like you
but
got
if
40 acre site.
But if you put a mile separation, they would not be next to each other.
You wouldn't even be able to see the next one, probably.
I mean, you could, yeah.
I would say, you know, I mean, I understand the issue where 5's too much. So we gotta come up with, we wanna try to accommodate that. We gotta come up with something less than 5 that works. So what works?
What works?
Huh?
So what works?
4 work?
So you're asking me?
Yeah.
4 won't work?
Or it won't work?
Nope.
3.75?
Okay, well,
Well, that means you got a minimum then of 3 miles. You know, if you get any smaller than that, you know, we might as well stay with 5. You know, we're gonna try to regulate this thing. You know, Arc Valley just have to look elsewhere, but.
Well, but even, I mean, if we're talking 10-acre plots and you're 3 miles apart.
Oh, yeah.
That's, I mean, I don't see a loophole there, or even 1 or 2 miles.
Because I mean, you know, like I live 2 miles east of K-14 highway. So that means if they put one over here, you couldn't put one be a mile west of the highway, you know. 3 miles.
Well, this brings up another angle, I think I mentioned it last meeting, and that is, what's magical about 10 acres? Why not 15 or 20? And if I'm Arc Valley, I might like, if they're thinking 2 10-acre installs, it's probably gonna be a more efficient process for them to have 1 20-acre instead of 2 10 acres. I don't know, it'd just be my my guess, so,
I think when we developed these guidelines, though, I think Mark and Don sat down with Ark Valley and discussed it with them. And this is
Yes.
what, the consensus was after that meeting, was that 10 acres would work for them and the 2 megawatts.
True, yeah. So they were all right with that.
They was
That's
okay
where
with
they-
8.
except now they're coming back and we want another 10 acres close to that one.
Larry?
So that makes me think, yeah, maybe they should have been thinking 20 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
But they were fine with 8 acres. And so we just upped it to 10, just to give them an extra couple, just to make sure there wasn't an issue, and they needed 9 for a site.
Well, they're at 8 and they're at less than 2 megawatts, so at least they can go 10 to get to 2 megawatts if they want.
If they wanted to. Yeah, if they wanted to do an expansion out there.
About 2 miles. Can't see that far.
That's what I was just kind of putting some X's on the map here. Just section lines, just kind of putting some X's to see.
I don't know. I would still be in favor of 3. I'll give you a little more distance protection, for the big guys don't come in and try to do something hopscotch.
Isn't our objective, though, as the elected body has told us, we don't want large-scale commercial. So our objective is to write regulations so that whatever happens, it won't become a large-scale commercial. Is that right?
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
these regulations would not permit a large-scale development. Right. And part of that's gonna be citing the facilities a certain distance apart, so it makes it infeasible to do it.
If we want to work with a distance, I think 2 miles would do it. If we want a number in there. Rather than trying to do it with words.
Well, and I think we've already defined, like, the difference between, because if we had, say hypothetically, a loophole that we could drive a solar plant through, that they would still be constrained by our definitions in 25-103, correct?
Yeah, where they couldn't sell it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
It has to be,
So ultimately, there's a ceiling of how much could be generated, even if they hopscotched every 10 acres, because they can't sell it.
We go every 2 miles, I just went north to south on our map. That's 15 potential sites,
cost-wise,
top to bottom, north to south.
north or south. And then you go east to west.
Yeah, I didn't do the math on that. That's wider,
I guess
yeah.
a lot more sites.
Yeah, that goes 20 plus probably.
I could go with 2 miles.
You're good, but I prefer 3, let's put it that way.
We got 2 twos here.
Anybody ever played the game Pit? 2. Oh, let's,
So, I don't know, so if you looked at it a different way, right now, the maximum they can put out is 2 megawatts.
Right.
So you make it to where you can't join any 2 or join any that creates more than a certain amount, 2 megawatts. Well, now it can't be a large scale. I don't know, that's another avenue. You don't have to have the miles. They can't connect and create more than 2 megawatts.
But,
Yeah,
okay, well, how's that gonna affect Ark Valley's proposal? If they're gonna be
Well, I
relatively
think they,
close, would
Oh,
they
we
be
used
feeding
to-
into the same transmission lines?
Yeah.
do they have multiple ones feeding into the same? The same,
or,
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so.
I mean,
I don't know.
the
It's
whole
just
grid's
something-
kind of connected,
it is.
you know.
And, I'm thinking
No,
as
it's
an electric utility engineer for 50 years, this 2 megawatts we're talking about, you don't just go out and plug it into the wall. You gotta have a power line that's big enough to carry that 2 megawatts. And so I think that probably when they asked for the particular size they asked for, they already know that the power line they're gonna hook it into, I can't put more than 2 megawatts in there. They got customers to serve off of that line, and they gotta put new generation onto that line.
They're either near a line or a substation that can carry it.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I vote for 2 miles to satisfy this concern that's been placed upon us by the commission in that particular paragraph.
With no limit on total capacity or whatever.
'Cause
Wait,
if they get too many, they're gonna have to build a transmission line to get the power out of there. And they ain't gonna do that. They're gonna use the existing power lines that they have.
Well, and we already have the 2 megawatt limit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, per site.
So-
Yeah,
Per site.
per site. That's not
This is-
overall. it's
This
just
is
per
so
site.
sites can't be connected and then you have a large-scale commercial.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that anybody do that, but that's what this is about.
That's the intent.
So that can't happen.
So somehow, or you could word it somewhere in the regs that each site has to stand independent of, you know, adjacent sites or whatever, I don't know.
I don't know, when you put it into the grid like what they're talking about, it is somewhat connected.
We're getting away from land use, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting away from land use.
Well, yes and no, but we're trying to regulate the land use by controlling this.
I think the distance will dictate that.
But we don't wanna be so restrictive that we've curtailed the ability of the supplier to serve Reno County.
I would think 2 miles would give us the protection. I don't think it'd be economically feasible to build 10 acres every 2 miles
That's the question.
and hook them all together. It'd be like,
Having your
you wouldn't do a 10-acre sand pit every 2 miles and have to move all your equipment back and forth all the time. That wouldn't work.
I can go with 2 miles. What's the pleasure?
We're eating. Sure.
Garth, Gayla? What are your
I'm
thoughts?
fine with 2. I'm a little fuzzy on the whole overall plan, and I mean, it just bleeds right into what we've been instructed to get away from, and that is a larger scale solar install in Reno County. And, you know, all the concerns that come with that. Well, if all we're gonna do is break it up into little parcels, then all of the concerns about groundwater contamination and noise, glare, you know, we may be compounding concerns instead of restricting them.
And guys, I feel more comfortable with it because I know how they're gonna hook it into the grid. And in order to make a large-scale commercial, they're gonna have to build a transmission line to get the power out of it. You can't transfer 200 megawatts over those 4 kV lines out there, or 12 kV lines. So I'm more comfortable, I think, than you are, and I understand your concern. But you gotta remember, our original objective is just to prevent it from being could grow into a large-scale commercial. And I think the language we have will prevent that from happening.
Are there transmission lines in Reno County?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, all out there where the
We
power
have
plant's
Transport
located, there's lots
station
of
just a mile north of us.
Yeah.
That's true, but we're already preventing them from selling it on that, right?
Right. There's a limited scale, it can't be.
The economy of scale.
Well, and even the fact that, I mean, in our definition that they can't be producing electricity and then shipping it out of town.
So Ark Valley can only generate
For our.
what they're providing their
They gotta
members.
provide to their customers.
Yeah.
With their most efficient system.
Evergy, if they put in a site there on the ground like they were talking about, that'd have to be for their own use.
Now, you have to be careful if the only use is for Reno County, because some of them are on the edge that feed part of Reno, maybe part of Kingman or whatever, so.
Yeah, I don't think we're defining it by
No.
where the customer
No.
lives, just that they're not selling it to like, you know.
South Carolina.
Yeah.
Used by the utilities customers.
Maybe that's the words that need to go in here, is that you can have them as close as 2 mile apart, as long as you're serving your own customers.
Well, I mean, in our definition of limited scale, it says the produced electricity is not transferred to a third party. It does allow net metering, so.
Yeah, so if we still have concerns there, put some language in there that more or less seconds what you just read as a limited scale, is it can be transferred. In other words, it's, if it, you have to get one to 2 miles, 2.5, 4.1 miles apart, is that, am I hitting this a nerve?
Yeah.
To serve your own customers, to do it economically, to provide the best source of lowest priced electricity to their customers. If it has to be within 4.1 miles apart, why, I see that's okay. And by putting a limit in that of 2 miles in there, that writes the criteria. Okay, but doesn't put a restriction on.
Do we want to change then the definition of limited scale to indicate that the electricity produced should be used, predominantly used or primarily used to provide service to the utilities customers? Well,
You can't-
I mean, you can't get too general with it because.
No, we already have that.
Utility
Does it not state, you don't think it does that now?
That would work for Ark Valley, it doesn't work so well for Evergy.
Well, if they're using it to provide, feed their system and provide electricity to their customers. Now, we're not saying in Reno County necessarily.
Yeah.
Evergy would have a
You're still limited to 2
big
megawatt.
load.
I think our definition probably covers it.
You think so?
I do too.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with it.
If we want to put a distance in there, under that section we were just talking about, I think 2 miles would do it. And not put a restriction on what we know is already going to happen, or hopefully will happen.
Everybody good with 2 miles?
Yep.
Garth?
I'm fine with it.
Are you okay with it? Yeah. Gail, you good?
I think so.
Okay, you weren't very convincing. We're good with, let's put it into the draft and we can still
Okay.
revisit it.
You'll need to
It is-
change your
it isn't-
footage
It
reference.
isn't final yet, but
Yeah, and I'm gonna put in where you measure that feed from. Is
The
it
closest boundary of each site.
boundary, or is it the lease area, there's a lease area and then a parcel boundary,
I would
within
go
that.
leased area.
Least area, the boundary of the parcel boundary.
Parcel boundary, the parcel
It'd
boundary.
be the leased area or the project boundary. Would that be okay?
Yeah,
And is it road miles?
Nautical.
Well, I'm thinking as the crow flies, whatever you call it.
Yeah, that's nautical model.
Yeah, no, it's,
Provided we don't fly the crow.
As the crow flies.
it's as crow flies,
Okay.
the way I've done it.
So you sure 2 miles is kind of what you want? Because we're hoping this is the final thing, but, so is 2 miles what you want?
I feel pretty good with it. I feel pretty good at 2
Well, I heard
miles.
somebody say, well, we're not sure yet, so.
Well, I did. I was just doing that. Gayla's got some question here. and I just want to give her some time
I
to.
just want to make sure it's right, so that's it.
No, that's good.
I think 2 miles would probably be okay.
Okay. Setbacks.
I'm getting hungry.
You're getting hungry. Well, we only have two more paragraphs to get through here, so we're in good shape.
Yeah.
But then we got another.
Took us a half hour to go 2 miles.
But then we got another one to go here.
Got 8 pages.
Yeah, we got a ways to go yet. I'm hungry too, so we won't.
Dally.
Setbacks I'm fine with. Like the 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't have any concerns with.
Okay, the previous.
Height, fencing, and lighting you're fine with?
Yep.
Good. Everybody else, we're kind of zooming through.
Kill everybody's appetite.
Paragraph 6, communication and distribution lines.
Do we need that, in 6, that last
That paragraph?
paragraph? I mean, distribution lines outside the conditional use permit, they're gonna do what they want.
I don't think we need any of number 6.
Well,
So you're thinking you.
6 will control if they need to be installed underground or above ground.
yeah, I prefer underground because you don't have that visual
Within the project.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, within the project area.
Outside of the project, I don't think we need to.
Well, yeah, and I mean, isn't that all covered by current regulations anyway?
We didn't regulate pole
Well,
height.
whose regulation?
Well, that's true. Well, I mean, like rights of way, like they can't run a communication line through my living room without.
Oh, yeah,
More underneath.
more of the house.
They're gonna have to get an easement for it.
Probably all going to be controlled by AI anyway. Probably have somebody over in China or Russia trying to figure out how to
Why
intervene
don't
with
we
that.
get AI to write these regs? Jeez.
Should be easier, wouldn't it, maybe?
Chat box or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I know.
So on paragraph 6, we're okay with what's in blue?
Right,
And then
And what's in
the
yellow?
last one.
We need to strike, is that what everybody's saying?
that's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to, I'm gonna skip number 7, it doesn't look like that's all pretty standard.
7.
We'll go to paragraph 8 with battery storage. So what you're saying there, Mark, is if they do have a battery storage, the project is gonna have a fence.
Yes.
And so you're saying that if they do have batteries, that they need to have it secured, whether it's in a building or a fence, is that what it's saying?
Yeah, you put it, if it's not in a fireproof storage building or whatever, then you would need a secondary fence. I was trying to clarify that we don't need to have those fenced if we've already got a perimeter fence and they're putting it in
A building.
a building.
Right.
We just didn't want, and I don't know if that's even feasible or if they even do that, but we didn't want the batteries just sitting out there
No.
I'm with you.
unsecured, if you will.
I'm with you. Subparagraph B and C to that. Any questions or comments?
No.
Paragraph D, the battery storage setbacks, I guess that would, if they are going to put, how does that fit in with our setbacks? $500 from a non-participating already, so the batteries would fall under that, that's staying consistent with a non-participating property owner's principal building. Page 25-9.
We're talking about,
Setback, visual setbacks, you
Yep.
want to look at those.
Here's-
talking about just the panels, isn't it?
What's that?
The number 2 setbacks.
Setbacks, there it is. Setbacks.
Minimum distance for any solar panel.
Measure.
Yes. But what I'm saying is that would determine the outside boundary.
Yeah, so you're
And
saying,
so
you're not saying.
the battery is gonna stay, the battery setback is consistent with the outside boundary of the project.
So you're not saying to eliminate that
No,
consent,
no.
leave it.
I'm just looking
Yeah.
at making sure that they're consistent, so we don't have
Yeah.
one that says the panels need to be 500 feet and the batteries are 700 feet, or
Right, yeah.
want to make that consistent.
Nope, we're good.
Any other questions or comments on that?
On the 500 feet for batteries?
Yes.
I think we should talk to an expert about that. I don't know if I'd want to be within 5 miles of a battery.
Well, I come from out west where the fire was so bad a few years ago. I don't know if anybody remembers. But there was things in that fire that got hot enough that they just disintegrated, like fireplaces in people's homes and safes in their homes. And like the highway, it kind of just made it like it was petrified almost. What if there was a bad fire like that happened to get rolling through? How would that affect a battery if it was to come up close enough that the heat, because that fire was extremely hot, a lot hotter than anybody ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah, we do provide, what is it, a 10-foot fire break around battery storage.
It would have jumped that.
10 foot, well, yeah, but if it's in a brick or a cinder block building, you know, depending on the roof structure, you know.
Yeah, I know that in the cemetery, there was a mausoleum, and it wasn't there when the fire was done.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, that was the fire burning right up through it,
It
against
threw
it.
it, it went through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a concern that I was thinking of.
10 foot is not much of a fire break.
It's not a fire break.
I've been burned enough grass that it gets pretty darn hot.
In my opinion, these 2 megawatt facilities are not gonna have batteries, but maybe they will 20 years from now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
We need to not come out after the fact and say, oh, wait a minute, you can't put batteries there until.
Why wouldn't it?
I really think we need to consult with somebody that
I mean,
can tell us more about batteries.
So maybe think about maybe all batteries have to be stored in a fireproof container or building. And you don't have to worry about it.
Like
like Harley said, yeah, I don't know if they put batteries out there from what I understand, not right now, but in the future, they could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they have to be
Well,
stored in some fireproof, then, you know.
Yeah.
have
Do
to-
batteries explode or do they just burn?
I don't know.
They burn and they burn hot.
They just, yeah, they burn hot, but they just, I mean, they burn, they don't like explode, you know, it's not like a gas plant.
So if they're in a fireproof, then if they catch on fire in there, it protects outside of it.
They're
If there's
still in
fire on the
there.
outside, it protects them on the inside.
Yeah,
From fire, but not from heat, like if it
Well,
was.
fireproof, I don't know, that would be, I would think heat proof, but I don't know.
Well, even,
I don't know.
but our
It'll
goal is,
contain it,
yeah, our goal is to prevent,
Yeah.
to contain the damage.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to Jack's point, which I agree with, are we covered by number 8? All battery energy storage systems shall comply with requirements of the National Fire Protection Association. Does that make us feel any better? I don't know what those are, but
I don't need this.
Just make your regulations crystal clear.
I think, say, I agree, just put it in a fireproof building. It's the
Say-
simplest way to do it.
Fireproof battery storage shall be located, and then just put the
Battery
words
storage.
fireproof right in front of battery storage, and how do we, okay, we're defining it, we're putting a term there.
Yeah.
Do we need to put a definition?
Battery energy storage systems
But I mean.
shall be enclosed within a fireproof building.
Right, but define fireproof.
Right, so do we need to go back to our definitions and put fireproof and then work with, would that be something that emergency management could define?
What do you do, yeah?
what did we say about the
Yeah.
King Solar building? They were gonna be storing batteries. We didn't say anything about that, did we?
That's wood framed, isn't it? Or the,
It's got
or
something
the steel
else.
frame.
It's got steel.
This is steel frame.
Steel truss.
Part of it is anyway. But the storage of it would have to be, go back in under number 8. Under 8A. And then D is just talking about how far you want the storage facility set back.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So if you want to not have it just enclosed by a fence, then we'll have to change that.
Yeah. I think change A, so to read, it's contained within a fireproof building, then how do you, I mean,
It may not be very many batteries.
Right,
Just
some
contain
sort
one.
of, some sort of fireproof
Fireproof structure.
containment. And then you'll have to get with emergency management to determine what that means and put that in our definitions page. That way, whoever.
Or define it in here, either or.
Yes,
Either
yes.
define it in here or.
yeah,
Yes.
we can get that information.
Someplace they-
from Emergency
'cause-
management.
One guy's fireproof is some R12 fiberglass, and the next guy's fireproof is 3 feet of concrete. So we got,
3/4 inch, fireproof sheetrock.
we got to make sure that we got a definition there.
We'll make sure that it's defined so people know.
Okay. Fair enough. Everybody good on letter D then? If we're changing the definition in previous paragraph, letter D is good with the setback there. Okay, I'm going to move ahead to paragraph 9.
Well, wait a
Whoop.
minute, D. So how close could it be to the owner's non-principal building?
A non-principal?
Yeah.
It could be there. If it's an
Right.
ag building, the ag building could be right on the border.
Okay.
And then
Right
it's,
next door.
and then in that case, it's
Has to be
500 feet
west.
from.
Talking about the principal building, we didn't do anything with non or accessory buildings.
Yeah.
In that case, it could be 100 feet from all property line.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, section 9, or paragraph 9 on noise.
I think we can eliminate B.
Do we need this section for 10 acre facility.
They're gonna have battery storage, you never know.
Do batteries make noise? I don't.
Well, the inverters and stuff, the equipment in there does, yes. Some of the stuff I read on it, it's a constant humming type noise.
Yeah, but whatever they do, it will be less than 60 decibels.
60 decibels is
Yeah.
pretty low.
So that's what I'm saying, is we could leave that in there, just, but I don't think we need
It's
item
just-
B.
It's just boilerplate to
Yeah.
make us
Yeah.
protection of,
So what's the wishes? Do we eliminate paragraph B?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Paragraph C, anybody, any conversation there? Paragraph 10, subparagraph A, operational requirements.
once again, I put that in the category, it's just boilerplate.
Yep.
Letter B to me, I don't know if we need that.
No, I
I
don't.
agree
think
with
we
you,
do.
I've Xed it out.
Yep,
Okay.
I think we can get rid of it. Letter D was an addition, I think that needs to stay.
Yeah, Don put that in.
Wants to
Noxious weeds.
Keep the weeds down.
Well, I did have a question about 3 feet. 3 feet tall grass seems to be pretty tall.
Pretty
Well, native grass is, that's, little blue stem is about that. Big blue can get up to, if it's in a low area, it's pretty tall.
Big, real
But
big.
even so, I think 3 feet is a nice general rule.
That's
I
not
mean,
high enough to.
now, if it was 3 feet of pigweeds, I'd be squawking about it, but if it's native species, I'm not too worried. I don't know.
Well, the issue is fire, so it all burns.
Well, I get you. I get you.
Well, and
And I
that's,
think that's gonna be this is probably a maximum guideline. If I had an investment out there, I'd probably be trimming a little bit better than 3 feet if there was fire danger. I don't know, I can't speak for any developer, but that's how I would probably operate.
Well, if we're wanting the land to be least disturbed, I mean, its original state is native grass, so I would think we would want enough room for native grass
and
to
for the
grow.
environmental issue, as far as runoff and whatnot, that's gonna filter,
Yeah,
the sediments out of any water going down.
Yeah, I think for our other
Yeah.
concerns, I think having native grass there is the way to go.
Paragraph 11. All good with paragraph 11? Paragraph 12.
Okay.
Very good. Paragraph 12. We'll go to section 25-109. It was added in subsection 2.
Two, we need to delete that.
Yep, the development agreement.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
Eliminate 2 then.
Yeah.
Yep, because it has development agreement verbiage there. Twenty-five, 110, we dissect pretty hard, that's the last, that's the,
Just going back up though, what about the second sentence? Says a development agreement shall be executed by the county commissioners, blah, blah, blah. Agreements, in the first, second line, commissioner shall enter into a development agreement, so that first, or maybe we delete that whole
We
section.
deleted that whole 25-110 section.
Okay,
Yes.
the whole thing.
Okay, I was wondering where you're at.
Minus that paragraph 2 that we looked at, that had to do with the decommissioning agreement. That was the only one in that bunch that we brought forward.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, that we were moving that up to somewhere else.
And I'll go and make sure when I go back through that now that you've essentially eliminated a lot of the developer agreements, that I'll make sure that that word doesn't appear anywhere else.
Okay.
Through 13, so we're doing 25-111.
Okay, one more to go.
Yeah. 25-111 on page 14.
112.
Yeah.
Wait, are we on 25-111?
Yes.
Section 1, since we don't have Article 25-110 anymore, then
Yep.
Yep.
delete that.
Do we need to delete that or we reference that, Mark?
Well, it's the whole, I think the whole thing needs to go away. Because it references all requirements under 25-110, and we took away 25-110.
But yeah, now, like I said, I think before, since you eliminated the
Yeah, we
developer's
eliminated.
agreement, essentially, I mean, to get a zoning permit, it's gonna follow our standard procedure here. I'd say everything in here was just reinforcing the fact that, we may need an oversized or weight permit. Well, I don't think you need that. Wastewater permits from environmental, well, we don't really have to worry about that. Army Corps permits, I mean, those are all covered under other conditional use permit requirements. Like I say, it was just added because we were talking about large projects, probably an out-of-state developer that may not know our process, and so that's why that was all kind of put in there.
So you're suggesting 25-111, remove the whole section?
Yes, because of the fact that you've eliminated the developer's agreement.
And all that.
And we'll have a site plan with the conditional use permit that we know that, because we're talking about just, one property right now, so yeah, I think everything on 111.
Kind of redundant, a lot of
Yeah.
It is. I'd say it was kind of
Done it in
reinforcing.
other areas of the regs, I think, yeah, okay. Okay. And
So that concurrence and eliminate all that then?
Yes.
Okay. A lot of this was because I didn't know if we were gonna have a developer's agreement or not, so now that you've decided that,
So
then.
the 112 follow pace with 111 then?
except I think we need to keep number 9 somewhere in there.
I don't know if all of 112 needs to get eliminated. I mean, now that I know this board's direction a little bit, I can go back and look and see if some of this is relevant or not, unless you previously reviewed and can tell me.
I'd be interested to have you do that, and then have on a clean copy, we can leave options on that
Yeah.
section 112 for discussion after you clean it up.
I'd second that approach.
Well, there's like number 1, talking about, violations of the conditional use permit, of the responsibility of the applicant, not the landowner. Is that still gonna hold true with a 10-acre site? I think when we had a developer's agreement, then the violations would be with the applicant, because the applicant would be signing the developer's agreement, not necessarily the owner of the properties. So,
Yeah, I'd say, if everybody else is okay with that, have Mark clean up 112.
Clean it up.
Yeah.
Represent it, yeah.
Yep. Now we're at the back of it.
Well,
Now, Article 15.
I've got one more thing on this one.
Okay,
The elephant in the room.
yes.
Key watershed. What do we want to do? I mean, if you're looking, first of all, these regs presently pertain only to the zoned areas of the county.
Yep.
So if you look at the,
And then it would be,
it would just be this
yep.
piece down here, which leaves all the rest of this available. So I think, I know back earlier, we received a letter from the city of Wichita, addressing their concerns on protecting the water going into Cheney Lake. So at this point, I would be in favor of putting in a provision that would prohibit development of solar systems within the Cheney or South Minnescar, whatever you call it, watershed district.
The only thing wrong with that is that if some private, wants to put one on his roof, if there is a concern.
This would be limited scale, not roof mounted, no.
Right, but I guess, so what you're saying is the concern is there regardless.
Whether it be a little tiny concern or a great big concern, it's still a concern. And to limit telling private individuals they can't put
I'm not
anything
saying
on
that,
the roof.
Harley. I'm saying that we prohibit limited scale installations within the watershed district. I'm not gonna try to stop the homeowner from putting out solar panels on his roof.
Okay, but why are you saying that? Because the city says it might put something in the lake.
Yes, it
Well,
might.
one on the roof could put something in
Yes,
the
it
lake
could.
too.
But you're
There's-
looking at a much larger scale.
There's more hazard to that lake coming from farmers' fertilizer than anything could ever come
Yep.
from any sort of solar panel being broken up by hailstorms or anything of that sort.
I looked at how many pipelines run through the Cheney watershed.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like an army of worms crawl through there.
If you look at oil wells, if you look at pipelines, if you look at grain elevators, if you look at former gas stations, current gas stations, realistically, those are bigger water polluters and bigger threats than, a little 8-acre square of glass.
There's an injection well just north of the lake.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I was surprised at how much activity there is.
There's an old missile silo next to the lake.
And I'm like Arby, if a solar panel is bad, then why do you want any of them there? But then I think, well, all this other stuff seems way more bad to me than a solar panel.
Well, I agree, Garth. I mean, a lot of it is, but on the other hand, we have a lot more knowledge today about how bad some of this stuff is than we did when all this other stuff was developed and installed.
But we still allow oil wells to be drilled.
Oh, yeah, you're still drilling oil wells, you're still running pipelines,
Yeah.
But really, if you look at it, what damage has been done there, the solar industry is just starting and we don't know yet. We're yet to see. I mean, it's been around for a little bit, but has it been around for as long as oil and gas or some of these other industries that we're talking about here?
And with just even a 10-acre site full of solar panels, you have, I think, a lot more potential.
I don't have any knowledge, or no knowledge was ever presented to this that says that's hazardous at all. It's an opinion, that's all that ever come before this in public hearing. An opinion, it might do something to the lake.
I don't have any of the documentation with me, but I've read other studies that show that they're these things can leach into the ground. So, you know,
I haven't
it's a
seen
concern to
that.
me.
I don't, and I have a hard time believing some glass panels are a bigger threat to groundwater than, well, honestly, a farmer plowing a quarter section of ground. I mean, realistically,
And fertilizing it,
yeah.
and the fertilizer going into the watershed area.
Well, that's been going on for centuries, you know.
And
So,
what
I mean,
has- what has
the
been
solar
doing
systems
so far?
are a fairly new occurrence. So, you know, we're not gonna prevent farmers from fertilizing their field. That's not gonna happen, you know. So we kind of control what we can control, you know. You know, farmers are, you know, facing their own set of issues with water rights as it is.
But we are not going to stop a farmer from putting solar panels on his shed or his
Probably
barn.
not.
And if there is an hazard, and I don't believe there is, I've seen no technical information that says there's a hazard from solar panels. It's nothing but glass. I've seen no data that says
Glass
that,
or plastic or something.
no
you know, they're
data
not
that
always
says that's
glass.
hazardous.
But then there's the.
But if it
they're
is,
broken, then you have all the internal stuff, and that's where the bad stuff comes from.
you say that, but I have no knowledge of that.
Okay? I don't have anything to document what I'm telling you, Harley, just from what I can remember reading in the past. So. So I guess, you know, I'm just saying err on the side of caution. You know, and you're looking at a relatively small portion of the actual zoned area of the county. So,
But we're also setting a precedent for the rest of it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I understand that.
Well, so what else,
The county commission does with the rest of the.
so what else are we willing to ban in this watershed?
What's that?
What else are we willing to ban in this watershed? Because I have the concerns that Harley does that I haven't seen credible evidence that this is on a, you know, at a small scale, we're talking under 10 acres, is a concern worth restricting property rights over.
Or more specifically, there's another way of saying that. There's a concern over restricting the utility company, co-op or otherwise, that they can't provide reliable electric service to their customers because we put a restriction on them.
Or that the alternatives are not worse. I mean, like, in my neighborhood, the Huntsville station, there was a diesel generator to reduce peak load before the solar farm, the little 10 acres was installed. And I'm not a scientist, but I find it hard to believe that a diesel fuel generator with fuel on site is less of an environmental risk to the water than a small amount of solar. I mean, we know that diesel fuel contaminates water. We know that generators produce particulates and nitrous oxides. They're smelly, they're noisy.
I'm sure too, though, that the diesel substation to generate more power had a berm around it, which was created through.
It was
doesn't-
portable.
No berm.
It was portable. They just drove it in.
Maybe they didn't go over the amount of gallons that they were supposed to have then, because they have regulations.
There are regulations, but
And they put those regulations in place for reasoning of, you know, they've seen what diesel and things have done before to where it's leached or where it's leaked out places. But it's kind of like, we as not being scientists know that you wouldn't want to dump, you know, on purpose a whole bunch of fuel and I think that we as scientists also know that we wouldn't want to run knowingly or not knowingly a lot of heavy metals, if it so happens to be true, and I've read some reports too, just like Steve has, that there are reports saying, and I say, why do we look away from those? And yet we need to look at everything here before we just say it's okay, because we don't know yet on everything, because we're not scientists.
Do we have copies of those reports?
See what we come up with by the next meeting.
Yeah, and I could come up with some too, probably.
I'm just cautious because I've done we've all done research to some extent. You can find research on both sides of the fence.
Yep.
So I tell you, it's whatever your search engine wants to bring up for you.
And it's a money talks in both sides of it.
It is, it's hard to sort through, it's very hard to sort, and at least for my mind, I'm trying to sort through the jungle of, okay, is there or isn't there type of argument, it's hard. So I just caution us as, fall in one direction really hard.
Well, we collectively don't want to limit a farmer or a resident to be able to use solar in the areas we're talking about here. And if it's bad, and I don't believe it is, I don't believe any of that information that is bad. It's nothing but glass, and it's controlled. It doesn't dissolve into the earth or anything of that
I
sort.
think that's an oversimplification, though, when you say it's nothing but glass, Harvey, because it is more than just glass. That's on the exterior is just glass, yes.
But if you won't let a limited scale solar system in there, why are you going to let a farmer or a resident put the same thing in the same
I
area?
definitely see your point, but also, come back and say, well, the limited scale system is a much larger footprint than what, a farmer would put on his shed or barn.
But that's not good criteria.
Alan, what does Miller Dairy have out there? How big is solar system?
That's a really good question. That's a big shed.
That is a big.
That's a big shed. It's a couple 100 feet long, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would think.
It would be probably an acre, you
It
think?
would. I wouldn't be surprised, yeah. So I think it would be safe to say that there's probably already more than 10 acres of solar in the blue area already.
There's an acre right there.
I think that's a reasonable guess.
So I guess there aren't very many heavy users like that, like the Miller Dairy, and
Right.
that I'm using as an example.
Right.
But if you put in perspective, solar becomes very popular and becomes the cost comes down to where we could see, maybe, I don't know whether it's net zero for a farmyard or what, but you could potentially see a lot more solar banks out there than what we would be with a limited scale
And
commercial.
we all agree we don't want to put that limitation for residents or businesses or things of that sort, farmers or otherwise. And if we all agree we don't do that, there's no reason to, with this limited scale, to put a restriction on that too.
It's the balance, okay? We want to protect the groundwater. We want to help our neighbors to the southeast to ensure that they have a water supply in the future. But we also have a responsibility to the landowners in the county we represent to do the right thing.
Well, it makes sense to me, a compromise, if we're gonna have exclude that area, then I think it would make perfect sense to exclude oil and gas activity, production, storage, transmission. I even looked at the pipeline leaks. There's an average of one every 2 years in Reno County. So it's just a matter of time before something happens. But we're okay with pipelines all over the place down there. And I don't understand why something as innocuous as Harley kind of describes, as solar panels are, the threat level is not motivating to me compared to some of these others. But if we want to have a pristine area, I'm perfectly okay with that, but it needs to be consistent. I don't think we can pick and choose which pollution we're okay with and what we're not okay with.
In my opinion, the limited scale solar system is less hazardous than all those things you mentioned, including farmers putting fertilizer on their ground, and if the rainfall, it goes into that lake.
Well, I think one of the reasons that oil and gas is bigger and solar, I don't know if it ever will be, because like for farming, I know solar, the cost of a tractor would be right now a lot higher. The weight of a tractor would be a lot heavier. And I didn't drive here in a solar car. I know some of you do, but I don't know how you where to plug one in. So that's probably why oil and gas, and it does take a bigger hit, but look how much bigger of a scale it is on in the end. And it has been around for 100 years now, and we found out where it pollutes, and over time we were surprised by some of that, and hopefully it's been taken care of. But I guess until I feel that if we've opened the doors completely on solar, when there's some scientists say that it does pollute and others say that it doesn't pollute, I think we need to be really careful.
Well, we haven't opened the door. We have 90% closed the door to solar. Because right now, we're just talking about something under 10 acres, right?
I know, but I know.
But, so it's not, we haven't opened the doors to solar. I don't think that's an accurate statement. And, I mean, I don't consider myself, I'm a producer, and I used to work for a pipeline. So I'm not against developing all of the natural resources of Reno County. But I think when I say that, it includes solar. And in this case, we're just talking about small amounts of solar that I'm running my air conditioner on 2 miles from a substation. We're not shipping large amounts of energy with large facilities to another state. And so in that case, I think maybe this is overstepping our bounds for a small project, which is what we're looking at.
Mr. Chairman, is it maybe best that we schedule another meeting to talk about this?
Well, our next schedule is the 15th. So I would say, that's probably a good conversation to have right now. I've been rolling it around in my mind. You're just kicking me off the curb to get to talk about it, Harley.
And pretty soon I'm going to get a text message from my wife and say, are you coming home?
It's still alive. Yes. The changes that we've made tonight, Mark, I know we have Article 15 to go through yet. I don't know if we want to do that.
Yeah, you know if you want to do that tonight or not, I'm glad you.
We may continue on until
Yeah, that's fine.
15, but like our changes, would you have that for us by here in a couple weeks?
Yes, I'll make it happen.
Okay.
Yep, I'll do it. I'll try and get it done this week and get it sent out.
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna be that hard. I got a couple of things to look at. I think you wanted some further wordsmithing, to use your term, I believe, on that. But everything else is just delete, so that's not gonna take too long. I'll make sure it happens before our meeting, and my goal would be to do it this week sometime.
Okay.
So you just have a week to look at a clean document. What I'll do is I'll get rid of the yellow and the blue. On the last section on the construction requirements, which you wanted me to kind of review again, since you gave me a kind of a new direction. I may get rid of the yellow, but I'll leave the in as it is, and then just put strike-throughs through everything that I think we can eliminate. That suffice, that's good for everybody. So you can see what the document looks like now versus what I proposed to.
That sounds fair enough. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to recess
I so move.
this meeting to the February 15th meeting. And I'm just gonna state it out, and you can repeat it, you can say ditto, whatever. We'll recess until February 15th, which will be date. Time is 4:30, and meeting place is here at the Reno County Public Works.
That's perfect.
So that's been moved by Harley, seconded. All in favor of recess? All in favor of recessing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.